And welcome back to another edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. I'm your host, Tom Johnston, joined by LaMarr Fields. How you doing, man?
Pretty good.
That's good. So, a lot's transpired this past week in the baseball world, coming off of the trade deadline. We're going to get into that just because there were some surprising moves. One of those moves was made by the Milwaukee Brewers. I don't know why you would trade your closer when you're highly in contention and in first place in the thick of things in the NL Central. First off, LaMarr, how have you been? And second off, is what caught your eyes about that trade for the Brewers? Why do you think that they would go as far as to trade Hader when you're right in the thick of things in the NL Central, you're in contention, and all of a sudden you're trading your closer out of all things? I mean, I don't understand why the Brewers would eventually think of doing that, but it's a move that they made. So
Yeah, I didn't understand why it's trade him either. Then I started looking more into it, and his contract pays him 11 million this year. He has one more year of arbitration before he becomes a free agent in 2023. But then I started looking at that maybe they wanted Devin Williams to take over the closer role because All Star he pitched 8 innings, he got 1.74 ERA, he got 7 saves so far this season. So maybe they want to deal with the arbitration stuff down the road, or but it's still a head scratcher. I couldn't really wrap my head around it.
I mean, yeah, it's a good thing to bring up the arbitration because you have to figure, there are teams that struggle in that sense. I know that the Yankees had a similar situation with Aaron Judge, where they've agreed to pay him say 17 million or so for this season, but he's still going to be in line to get a big payday, and people have to wonder with where the Yankees are currently at. Is it worth fighting through the arbitration? Because for people that don't know, the arbitrator is going to try to meet both the organization and the player halfway. Whenever you get into a certain situation like that, it's going to be tough because sometimes the arbitrator might rule in favor of the player, in favor of the organization, and sometimes it's really not halfway. And you really got to ask yourself, I mean, is it all worth it to really deal with that? Or, hey, should we just ship this person off to a better team? Now, another trade I want to get into, and I'll personally say I actually didn't think that this was going to happen, but it happened. There was a three-team trade between the Padres, the Nationals, and the Red Sox, where Juan Soto and Josh Bell got traded to the Padres in exchange for five or so top prospects in the Padres organization. I know you're a big West Coast baseball guy. When you look at this trade, Eric Hosmer from the Padres, formerly from the Padres, rejected the trade to the Nationals for a lot of reasons we could name. It's probably one of the same reasons why Juan Soto rejected that insanely large deal from the Nationals in the first place. But now Hosmer's with the Red Sox, which is a team that's probably in a better position than the Nationals, but they're still in last place in the AL East. But let me ask you this. Do you think the Padres essentially gave up way too much? And the reason I ask is a lot of people say, okay, we're for what the Nationals were asking for, they a lot of people thought, oh, you're asking way too much. But whenever you also look at it from a statistical standpoint, Juan Soto has a year or a season or two still under control before he's a free agent. So it's basically a win now scenario where the Padres essentially they had what was essentially needed to make the trade. But do you think it was a wise trade for the Padres? Speaking of where they're at in the division and where they could go.
Yeah, it's more than a wide trade. You're getting the All Star Hall of Fame type talent. These prospects everybody talk about, we don't know if they're going to be any good or not at all. I mean, Padres and Padres, you still got control from this year and I believe next year. And if you don't want to pay the money, you can trade. You can trade them and get more, and get more back in return.
Now, here's
Oh,
another question because I know that a lot of fans will like come up with this rebuttal. Okay, if they traded for him and then say, "Oh, well, in 2 years, well, why didn't you re-sign him if you gave up all that? If you gave up all that in return?" So, like, from our perspective, we could honestly say, well, let's put it this way: you have 2 or so years of control, so you have 2 years to actually win it because people don't realize the Padres are in the thick of things right now in the NL
uh,
West, where like they can really make a move. And whenever you look at their lineup right now, I mean, it is loaded no matter which way you look at it. And putting guys like and having additions like Josh Bell and Juan Soto to the lineup, like, I mean, I don't know about a lot of baseball fans, but those are pretty two solid additions. But then whenever you also look at the contrary, it's just like, why, if people were to come with the rebuttal, oh, well, why would you only get him for, 2 years? Well, you have a 2 year window to win, and the Padres realistically have what it takes to win. But, you know, what would you say to the fans out there that are just like, oh, well, if you're just going to give him for a 2 year rental, then like, what's the point?
the point is, if he 2 years from now, he gonna really be in the prime of his career, and he could be hitting 30, 40 homers per year, plus bat 300. Then that price market goes up. You can get you can get back top level prospects, and you get ready to be ready MLB ready major league players right then and there.
Exactly, exactly. And I honestly think that it was a wise decision by the Padres. I think whenever you look at especially what people were willing to offer, I know that Juan Soto's name got thrown around by a couple different teams. And in fact, there were teams that were even reaching out to the Angels potentially about trading Shohei Ohtani. And you have to ask yourself, I mean, why is that a possibility? But overall, if you were to pick a winner of the trade deadline, which team do you obviously think actually won the trade deadline that says this trade is going to help propel this team for the future, and what they gave up was essentially, it was a lot, but it wasn't nothing because they could receive a greater return on the other side.
Definitely the Padres. We players like that normally don't get traded in the middle of the season. That's a big boost to their lineup. And Tatis starting his reactive assignment should be back pretty soon. Right, right when this, right when right before the playoffs get started, he should be hitting getting getting his timing down and everything. So it's gonna be interesting to see how far they can go.
Now, to point out to the fans of baseball, right now the Padres are essentially they are in the thick of things in the NL West. They're in second place, 61-49. They're 14 and a half games back of the division, but they are right in the thick of things whenever it comes to the wild card. And I know how at the beginning, whenever we launched this podcast, we talked about how that third wild card was going to be so vital. And I think that's another reason why the Padres pulled the plug, was because they thought to themselves, okay, the Dodgers may win. The Dodgers are probably going to win this. The keyword's probably. I mean, the Padres can go on an insane run and they can end up
Dodgers ain't
taking
Dod- Dodgers ain't losing no. I mean, Dodgers ain't losing no. What is it?
14 and a half.
Yeah, Dodgers ain't losing no 14 half
Yeah.
game lead. That team. That division's over. That
Yeah.
division's over. That division's over. And
The
the
AL
Yankee
West is
division is
done.
over. The AL West is over. I mean, the East is still in crocodile in the Central, in the NL Central, but the rest of the division is over.
But see, that's probably why the Padres made that move, is because, they thought to themselves, okay, division's out of hands, but man, if we make this trade now, that and to point out the people, they're a plus they're a plus half game into the wild card. So essentially they are literally like in a prime position for the wild card. Like, to be honest with you, it's like the Padres spot to lose in the wild card if they so please to. But to be honest with you, I essentially like this. It makes me want to stay up and watch West Coast baseball because you never know what's going to happen. I know right now that the Padres and the Dodgers have a series that is going on currently, and even then, I mean, it's great to see this happening, but you also do see that the Dodgers are just I do not see the Dodgers surrendering that lead. I mean, you could have 2/5 of their rotation go and they probably still wouldn't lose it just because
Yeah.
they're so loaded in all other aspects that, it doesn't make sense. Now, I would honestly say that the Padres won the trade deadline too, because truth be told to the people out there, Juan Soto's only 23. By the time he becomes a free agent, he's going to be entering 25 or so, or he's going to be 25. He's still not really even in the prime of his career yet in baseball standards. He's still young. But whenever you get a guy like this and a generational talent, I mean, this guy's going to come with a lucrative payday, but he's also going to be well worth it in the end because, like you've said earlier, this guy could end up hitting 40 plus home runs consistently a year. And for a lot of teams, that's something that they're going to covet. But, you want to be with the right organization that's going to be like, I'm going to put people around you to help build this organization. And, here's another thing I want to touch on is because so many people thought that certain teams were going to make moves that they weren't. Like, for example, the Pirates. A lot of people thought that, they might have traded David Bednar, one of the best closers right now in baseball, or Brian Reynolds to, make room for the newest wave of people. And they elected to stay put for whatever reasons. I mean, I do root for the Pirates, but half the time I don't understand the moves that they make because it's just like, you want to sell your prime talent for absolutely nothing in return. It doesn't get, I don't understand it, but, there are certain reasons why certain teams just stay put. It's just they don't feel like the return's going to be as great, or they just feel like, even if we were to trade this guy, maybe the return we get, it's not going to equal what we already have. So we'd rather stay put. And to me, it didn't seem like, this trade deadline was, as chaotic as, say, some trade deadlines in the past. We've seen teams making moves left and right, but, which team actually did you think that was actually going to make a move that didn't make a
Um, I really, I mean, I can't really say no team. I know a team that should have. I know some teams that should have been selling that
move?
didn't do it.
Well, let's put it this way. What team should have sold that, probably didn't sell?
The Giants,
Okay.
they were playing bad baseball. I mean, Carlos Rodon, he's not signing back there. He can go get some money and play for a better team elsewhere. He should have traded him, got some more farm systems. If you want him back, try to sign him back again next year because you got money. And
Mm-hmm.
should trade Jock Peterson, build up that farm system more. You're not winning. The 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 Farhan Zadi said during the trade deadline, well, it took a it took a it took a bad 2 weeks to get us in a position, and if we turn around and get a hot 2 weeks, um, they can get back. He said they can get back in it, but the way they played, they're 7 games back. They should have sold.
Yeah, seeing the Giants, they're 52 and 55, 22 games out, but they're 7 games out of a wild card spot. And I'm actually surprised, that the Giants really didn't make a move. I mean, there's just certain teams where, you say you should sell and they don't. Now, here's an interesting trade because I know a lot of people were like, why did the Orioles do this? And they traded Trey Mancini. And you got to ask yourself, okay, they got a nice return. I really haven't looked all into the trade, but a lot of people want to say, why trade this guy? And I tell people, do you not see the Orioles and what they currently have, like on their team, but also in their farm system? Like, to me, it was a nice, solid trade that they made because they realized that, hey, man, this guy's a great player and everything, but we also have other people in the pipeline that, we can actually get onto this team in the future 2 to 3 years. And this is me saying this, for the lack of success that Baltimore has had in recent seasons to right now on where they're at, like, okay, great. They are in fourth place in the AL East, but they're hanging in there and I actually thought they would probably have like a little over 80 losses by now, and they don't. And it's a proof to the talent that they have in their farm system, but also the prospects that they have on their major league roster already that are actually on the major league team that are helping them out in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that trade. In fact, I think it was a nice trade to begin with because it makes waves for these younger guys to actually get a chance and stuff. And what are your thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, I think it was a good trade for the Royals. I mean, they're playing decent this season. Very decent, but I mean, they took a step right direction. And they're like, well, might want to get more younger, more prospects, and see what we can do next year. They're definitely playing way above expectations, and that's good. Only one game out the wild card, still in it. Just see what they can do with the young guys. Young kids, gotta let the young players play.
Oh yeah, you got to. I mean, everyone wants to talk about development, and that's how you develop guys because there's at a certain time where you know these players, there's only so much in a minor league system that can actually help them develop, and then it's going to be like this, like as the owner and as the GM, as the organization, you're going to be like, okay, they've only can do so much developing in the minor league systems to where okay, the rest of their development has to take place at the major league level because you're only going to face so much talent in the minor leagues, and then hey, this guy just has to get called up because the only way he's really going to better himself and develop is if he, comes to the major league roster and comes to the major league team and faces the best of the best. And I think that's a big misconception with development is just so many players, everyone's like, oh, they need to be in the minor leagues for so many years. And it's just like the minor leagues are only going to do you so much as development wise. And it's also, okay, how great is this organization at really developing players? You're going to have to sooner or later call these guys up to the major leagues. And if they fail at first, they fail. But it's called fail forward and learn. Okay, well, at least I'm at the best of the best level where I'm at the highest level I could get to, and I got to develop more. I know that's why the Pirates, recently set down O'Neal Cruz because, as great as that guy is, the last time I looked at his stats, he was only batting like 204. And I tell people, like, you can have all the speed in the world, you can hit great, but the moment your average is right there, some signs are going to be like, we might need to send you down a little bit to, refine yourself because it's great that you got all these attributes and accolades. You got speed and you can throw, but the minute you can't hit, the minute you are going to fail yourself. And there's one other trade that I want to touch on before we get into some other things, because I know that the Yankees traded Joey Gallo, and I know a lot of people were like, oh my God, this guy can't even play in New York City. And then how ironic is this? Because neither you or I have ever made it to the major leagues, or else we probably wouldn't be here. But how ironic is it that you get traded to the team you're playing against? Because whenever he got traded, the Royals were playing the Yankees in New York in the Bronx, and he was still, staying with the Royals in their team hotel. I really wonder how that must feel because it's just like, okay, I got traded to the team playing against my former team. I'm still in my former team's hotel. Like, this is kind of crazy. I mean, he goes from one of the top tier franchises in all Major League Baseball to an organization that's, undoubtedly on a rebuild and everything like that. You know, what are your thoughts on that trade? And do you think it's going to be a great move for Gallo and company?
Gallo went to the Dodgers.
He did.
Yeah,
I
not the
thought he
Royals.
I thought he went to the Royals.
No, he went to the Dodgers.
Oh damn. See that? Wow. Oh wow. That I
Yeah,
forget because I remember that there was a player that was traded from the Royals to the Yankees.
that was Benettini.
Uh People forgive me. Forgive me. Yeah, I don't know. Um, oh boy. Well, anyways, what are your thoughts on that trade? Because yeah, that was totally a flip on my part. I thought that was Gallo, but I mean, yeah,
Yeah, that's a good trade for the Yankees. I think down the road it's going to help them out. Benettini's a good hitter. and strikeouts way less than Gallo.
That's true. That is true. So now speaking of Gallo, whenever you go from the Yankees to the Dodgers, you're essentially in like another hot team in another hot market. Do you think that's going to help him, or do you actually think like it's actually going to hurt him? Because a lot of people were saying, "Oh, the way that this dude can play in New York City, he's not what they need." Do you think that moving into the Dodgers is actually a better case scenario for him?
Could help him. I mean, different batting coach could see something different that the Yankees weren't seeing or Gallo ain't seeing. It's crazy
That's
because he
true.
got a good he got a good batter's eye. He just swings through a lot of pitches.
And sometimes you just need that one hitting coach. I remember, whenever Jose Bautista was with the Pirates and everybody was just raving about how dude just flat out couldn't hit or this, that, or the other, and he goes to the Blue Jays. And all of a sudden, this dude's hitting so many home runs, people were questioning whether he was on steroids, and they've tested him so periodically, and they're like, nope, he's not on steroids. It's just he's just that good. Or I shouldn't even say that good. They just switched his hitting mechanics a little to where he was able to start putting the bat onto the ball. And you have to wonder, the Dodgers, along with the Yankees, they are two organizations that, not only have a boatload of money, but they also just they know how to develop players because they bring up players to their farm systems all the time, and they constantly have a lot of talented players on their teams. I honestly think it could be a good move for Gallo. I just think that the one thing that could work in Gallo's favor is like you said, he just needs that right hitting coach because whenever he's with the Rangers, a lot of people were raving about him and saying, "Oh yeah, this guy's gonna be good and this, that, the other," and then all of a sudden, he kind of falls off. But sometimes you just need that right organization that just sees the right things in the guy. But it's just like we see that you don't have the right things, but we as a franchise and an organization have the right people that can help you out. And overall, I think a lot of these trades were very good trades. They were some trades that these teams needed, but I think a lot of other things could have happened. For example, the Pirates could have gotten rid of a few people. I'm not saying you had to get rid of David Bednar, but what I am saying is that do you plan to have, say, Reynolds along with Bednar in your future? Because that otherwise, if they're not a part of your future, why didn't you get something for them? There's certain things that I would question certain, teams on, but at the end of the day, it came and gone. And, now it's time to focus on to the second half of the season. And, before we get into the big news that has transpired, whenever you look at the standings, who has surprised you so far? If you could give three teams that have surprised you, say one team that you knew where they were going to be, like, okay, I'm not surprised that they're here, but then one team that you are surprised it's like in a position, whether it's good or bad, and then another team you see actually making a move.
Baltimore is surprising. Uh, Seattle
Mm-hmm.
and Philadelphia is to me is about to play well without Bryce Harper being out. And disappointing, I would be say the Giants, the White Sox, and Texas.
Yeah, I would honestly say that a surprise team for me, and this is like not necessarily in a good way, it's kind of in a bad way, is the Chicago White Sox. A lot of people were thinking, this is going to be the White Sox division to win. And, right now, I mean, they're 3 games out,
They're still in
but
it.
it's just a lot of people thought that, they were actually going to, be in a better position than what they are. I mean, they're 54 and 53, so they're a game above 500. But I honestly thought, who knows, the White Sox might have a little run in them, but, you also got to go through Cleveland and Minnesota. And it's, not saying it's going to be an easy battle, but, it can be a tough one. But I do know this though is that A team that is surprising to me in a very good way is Baltimore. I actually thought that they were going to be long out of it, and they're actually in it, which is a very good thing. And they position themselves to where they can actually say, the AL East is very tough, but at least we're hanging in there. Now, a team that I knew was going to be where they were at is the Yankees. I just knew that they were going to be a team that was going to be hot on fire this year in a lot of different ways. They have a lot of depth in their rotation, and I think that's one of the reasons why the Yankees have been so successful this year because, let's be realistic. I mean, they're 70-38. But part of the reason why they're like that is because their pitching rotation has stayed intact. They have a lot of pitchers that have been pitching very consistently and stuff like that and giving a lot of quality starts to where, they don't have to like think around and think, okay, who I got to plug in this rotation because this pitcher's just inconsistently out of it. But another team is the Angels, though. They've since tanked off in a big way, and I know that on his current road trip, Mike Trout, he was diagnosed with a rare back condition that is likely going to have to be monitored for the rest of his life and the rest of his playing career. And you have to ask yourself, where do the Angels go from there? Because, if this thing has to be monitored, how serious is it? And a lot of people started to crack jokes. Oh, he's got back issues because he's been carrying the Angels for, quite frankly, his whole career. And, well, that may be true. It's just, hey, this is a serious situation.
Carrying them where?
You know what? A lot of people just say.
When you carry a team, you carry them somewhere. So you carry them to nowhere because they never been in the playoffs.
I mean, he's been to the playoffs one time. I mean, you got to give him some credit. But
yeah,
I get it because he's a generational talent, and to be honest with you, it's like this. Whenever you look at the numbers that Mike Trout has, put up and everything, he's also a very injury-prone guy. I can't even think of any time in like the last 3 seasons, to be realistic, where this guy hasn't missed time due to an injury, and it's just like, okay, does this guy need to work on his durability or what is it? And you really just got to go from there because it's just like, if I'm paying you a boatload of money like the Angels are, and it's a boatload of money, why aren't you winning? I mean, the whole key is you want to put guys around this guy that can win, that should win and will win. But also, you got to be able to say to yourself that, you're able to spend money, but also to win. And whenever you look at the AL West, I mean, honestly, in the past like 3 seasons, Oakland really hasn't shown much promise. Neither is really Texas. Seattle's okay. I mean, they're starting to come alive this year, especially. But at the end of the day, the only real issue that the Angels have had was they've lacked a lot of pitching recently and stuff, but they've had an enemy in the Houston Astros that they've had to beat, and the Astros have shown those signs of showing down. But I mean, I just think whenever you look at it, he's not on the current road trip, which could be a great thing. But a lot of people are saying, he's expected to be back soon. But it's like, here's a question is why invest so much into this guy if the only time you've been to the playoffs with him is in 2013 and, it hasn't ended and you really haven't gone back since. It's like, why are you doing this to yourself as an organization? We all know that Angels, they got a lot of resources, but it's just like, what are your thoughts on
that? Yeah, owner don't have a problem spending a lot of money. Just the players that he spend money on don't produce. They got Rendon over there. He always hurt. I don't know. The owners are sooner or later the owner gonna get tired of spending all this money and we ain't winning. We're gonna be like trade them all.
I really have a feeling that that's actually might happen. Like they're just be like, listen, because like you got to understand, okay, within the next year, Shohei Ohtani is going to be a free agent, and we all know a lot of teams are going to be opening up resources to try to get him. And as the Angels, it's just from an organizational standpoint, a fan standpoint, people are just going to say, why are you investing all this money if you're not winning? And I think that from a lot of people, whenever they see Rendon went down, a lot of people are like, this is going to be the end because, like, he goes down and then everybody else goes down. And it's just like, at some point, you got to ask yourself, like, what's going on? A lot of people thought Madden could fix the problem, and then they fired him abruptly. And then it's all of a sudden like they just they fell off. But besides that, the biggest news to come out of baseball post All-Star break and everything is the unfortunate passing of Vince Scully. And I know a lot of Dodger fans that you really have never seen a broadcaster like Scully, because the way his voice is, the way he could tell a story, it's been crazy. Even a lot of people at the Dodgers face, a lot of teams that they might hate the Dodgers, but they've had a lot of respect for Scully. What are your thoughts on this? It's a very tragic incident, but I mean, the dude really had a craft that you don't see out of a lot of broadcasters.
Yeah, it was sad passing. He was Vin Scully, but he's a great broadcaster. Got to listen to when I was younger. I got to listen to some of his broadcasts. We had Direct TV, the MLB Extra Inning packages back in the late '90s. Got to listen to some Giant Dodger games on there. It was pretty cool hearing them call games.
Yeah, I know because whenever I first originally got MLB.TV, because I still have it just because I get a nice discount and everything, but that's besides the point. I would get it just to like start studying some broadcasters, and one of them was Vince Scully. And I know from a logical standpoint, that guy, he had a voice, but it wasn't even just about his voice. It was the way he called a game. He started every game the same way, but I think that it's just the class act that he was. You look at his career and how it started. The guy grew up in the Bronx in New York, and first got started with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and then whenever Dodgers ownership took the Dodgers from Brooklyn to LA, they brought Vince Scully with them, and it really hasn't changed. But I think whenever you honestly look at Vince Scully and who he was and who he is, he was really a guy that, just resembled what a baseball broadcaster should look like. And he really had what it took to be an LA kind of guy. But, it wasn't even the fact that he was an LA guy. It was the fact that he knew how to call a game. And, just the way he went about it, you would just, I know as a listener for me, I would just be quiet and just listen to how he called a game, because he would make it so transcribable that I shouldn't say he does remind me of how Doc Emmerich was in hockey. Like, it's like he pre-wrote the game. He kind of knew how the game would go down. He pre-wrote the game. He brought it in his briefcase, and then he was able to just call it. And it was just like the way he did, like, you could just close your eyes, not even look at the TV, and you could see how Scully just painted the picture and everything. And it's hard to say. I mean, you don't see broadcasters like the type of Scully that come around too often. You don't. And it's sad, it's unfortunate, but I mean, the dude lived his life, and he survived until he was 94. But I think that if you were to ask him and his family, he lived his life the way he wanted to, but he was a broadcaster that a lot of people admired. I know me as an aspiring broadcaster, I would have liked to meet the guy and pick his brain. Like, how did you learn how to do this, or how did you learn how to do that? Just because there are certain broadcasters that really know how to bring it, but then it's others that, man, that voice just really attracts people. And, I think from another standpoint, you see other organizations that they go through broadcasters every so often. What do you think that it was about Vince Scully that just like led him to stay with the same team for, quite frankly, his entire career? The Dodgers had to see something that a lot of other organizations don't see.
Just he liked the continuity of the team and staying and getting to know one team. You learn a team so well inside out. It's hard to leave. You got to start from square one if you go to another team. You got to get to know the players, the history, and you've been there so long. He got the history. You probably knew it like the back of his hand. So why leave?
Yeah, yeah, that is true. It's I know a lot of Dodger fans were reeling about it, and rightfully so. I mean, this guy was he was a generational talent, and he's going to be missed. I know a lot of teams are doing a lot of tributes just because the way he carried himself was one of a kind, and you don't get that out of broadcasters so often. But I mean, it's sad news, but at the end of the day, he leaves behind a legacy that as one of the best broadcasters in baseball. And a lot of people are just like, oh, well, why didn't he just retire? I'm just like, well, he could have. It's just the Dodgers wanted him. And, he really had a long lasting career. And whenever you get to say that, oh, well, my career essentially started in New York with the Brooklyn Dodgers and it ended in LA with the LA Dodgers, but I was still with the Dodgers. It's like, to me, that's an impressive broadcasting career because it's like, well, you've essentially like broadcasted for like two of the top like markets in all of like the country. That's a feat that really will never go unnoticed. But I think it goes to show you his work ethic and how he prepared, always in the dugout, always talking to people to find out the true facts and stuff. And I know from a logical standpoint, he's going to be very well missed, but there are going to be other people that are going to study that guy and are going to see, like, man, I can't be Vince Scully, but how can I put myself in a position to do what he did, but perfect my own craft? And with that, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. There was a lot to get into, and I'm happy we dug into it. And for LaMarr Fields, I'm Tom Johnston. We'll see you guys on the next one.